Steph Curry had no intention to change someone's life during the Warriors game against the Trail Blazers. But sometimes, the most unexpected moments create the biggest impacts. The game was intense, with fans packed into the arena, cheering loudly for every play. Kim Michael, a veteran server, was used to this energy. She had worked courtside events for years, balancing trays of drinks like a pro, weaving through the VIP guests without a single drop spilled. Tonight, the atmosphere was buzzing as the Warriors' sharpshooter Steph Curry was putting on one of his usual shooting clinics. While this was going on, Kim had no idea she was about to receive the biggest shock of her life. Kim had something troubling her deeply. Ryan, her son, had to pay his fees, and there was no money to do that. Ryan had always been a bright kid. Teachers called him a natural leader, the kind of student who inspired others to try harder. But no amount of talent or determination could erase the fact that college wasn't cheap. In his first year, Ryan had scraped by. Scholarships and part-time jobs covered just enough to keep him enrolled. But the second year was a different story. The scholarships weren't enough anymore, and his part-time job at the campus library barely paid for textbooks, let alone tuition. By the start of the second semester, Ryan had fallen behind on payments. He sat in the registrar's office one rainy afternoon, gripping the edge of his chair as the clerk explained his options, or lack of them. "I'm sorry, Ryan," she said, her tone polite but firm. "If the balance isn't paid by the end of the month, we'll have to withdraw you from classes." He left the office with his heart sinking. On the way to his dorm, the rain started coming down harder. His sneakers squelched with every step, but he barely noticed. His mind was spinning, searching for solutions he didn't have. Dropping out wasn't an option. He knew what that would mean for his future, and for his mom. Kim had worked herself to the bone to help him get this far. The idea of telling her he couldn't continue felt like failure. The next few weeks were a blur of stress and exhaustion. Ryan picked up extra shifts at the library and started tutoring other students in math, a subject he excelled in. His days became a relentless cycle of classes, work, and study sessions that stretched late into the night. But no matter how hard he worked, the numbers didn't add up. One Friday evening, Ryan sat alone in his dorm room, staring at his laptop. He had just received an email from the bursar's office. The deadline for payment was 2 days away. His balance was still short by $3,000. He ran his hands through his hair and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was his roommate, Jamal. "Are you coming to the party tonight?" Ryan shook his head and told Jamal he had something else to do. His roommate frowned, stepping into the room. Jamal was not having. It seemed like Ryan had used the same excuse for weeks, and it was getting frustrating for Jamal, who just wanted to have fun with his roommate away from the stress that came with being a student. For a moment, Ryan debated brushing him off, but the weight of it all was too much to carry alone. "I might have to drop out," he admitted quietly. Jamal's eyes widened. He was shocked by what he just heard. Ryan said simply, "I can't pay for this semester. I've tried everything, but it's just not enough." Jamal sat down on the edge of the bed, looking thoughtful. He felt so bad for his roommate, especially because Ryan was one of the smartest people he had ever met. Ryan shrugged, trying to mask the frustration boiling inside him. Life isn't fair. That night, after Jamal left for the party, Ryan stayed up late writing emails. He contacted every professor, mentor, and organization he could think of, asking for advice or assistance. By 2 a.m., his eyes were burning, and his inbox was full of polite rejections. When he finally crawled into bed, the weight of it all pressed down on him like a stone. He stared at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. The next morning, Ryan called Kim. He had planned to tell her everything, but when she picked up and he heard the tiredness in her voice, he couldn't do it. "Hey, Mom," he said, forcing cheerfulness into his tone. "Just checking in. How's work?" "It's fine," she replied, though Ryan could hear the strain behind her words. Kim also asked him about school. "It's good," he lied. Kim suspected something was wrong, but she couldn't place it. As they talked, Ryan felt a lump form in his throat. He hated lying to her. He had to open up to his mom. He told her everything that was going on, including the efforts he had made to get help. Kim couldn't bear to see her son go through such a terrible situation, but she was almost helpless. However, she knew she couldn't give up, at least not yet. So, Kim kept pushing. Somehow, she managed to put herself together. Dressed in her crisp uniform, she had just picked up an order of premium cocktails. The tray was loaded, but her hands were steady. She knew every corner of the arena and moved swiftly through the aisles, smiling politely at the high-profile guests who didn't bother to glance her way. But as Kim stepped forward to deliver the drinks, someone backed up without noticing her. It all happened in a flash. The collision sent the tray tilting, and suddenly, drinks were flying everywhere. Glasses shattered on the polished floor, ice scattered like marbles, and liquid splashed on the feet of several courtside guests. The crowd gasped, and all eyes turned toward the unexpected collision. Kim's heart raced, her cheeks flushed with a mix of pain and embarrassment. She heard murmurs from the surrounding seats and the unmistakable sound of someone capturing the moment on their phone. Before Kim could process what had just happened, a familiar voice broke through the noise. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." Steph Curry was suddenly beside her, crouching down to her level, his hand lightly on her shoulder. Kim blinked in confusion. She hadn't realized it was Steph who had clipped her. The realization made her even more flustered. I'm fine," she stammered, trying to wave it off as she reached for her tray. Steph wasn't having it. He told her to hold on and asked if she was hurt. His concern was genuine, his warm brown eyes scanning her face for any sign of pain. "I'm okay," Kim said, though her ankle throbbed a little. She glanced down, embarrassed by the attention, and told him she was a bit surprised about what had just happened. Steph noticed her wince as she shifted her weight to stand. He offered to help, extending a hand. His grip was firm, but careful, and he helped her back to her feet as the crowd clapped and cheered, appreciating the moment of humanity from their star player. One of the arena staff rushed over with a chair. Steph motioned for Kim to sit down. "Take a second," he said. "No rush." But Kim hesitated. She didn't want to hold up the game or cause a bigger scene. But when she glanced at Steph's expression, she saw nothing but sincerity. Reluctantly, she sat down, letting out a small sigh of relief as she took the weight off her ankle. Steph offered to get ice for the ankle, already signaling to someone on the sidelines. Kim shook her head quickly, implying that she was okay. "I just need to keep moving. That's all I need now," Kim said in a low tone. Steph smiled, but it was the kind of smile that said he wasn't convinced. "All right, but let me make it up to you." He turned to the crowd, raising his arms dramatically. Then he did something shocking. "Can we get a round of applause for the hardest working person in this arena tonight?" The crowd erupted into cheers, some standing and clapping as Kim's cheeks turned crimson. She couldn't help but laugh nervously, shaking her head. As Steph jogged back onto the court, he turned and called over his shoulder, "Don't go anywhere after the game." Kim didn't know what he meant, but she was too overwhelmed to think much about it. The game continued, and the moment slowly faded into the background as fans refocused on the action. After the final buzzer, with the Warriors claiming a hard-fought win, Kim began packing up her station for the night. She was exhausted, her ankle sore, but she'd made it through. Just as she was about to head to the staff exit, a member of the Warriors team approached her. "Steph wants to see you," they said with a friendly smile. Kim's eyes widened with surprise. She found it hard to believe that Steph would want to see her again. "Are you sure?" The staffer nodded, leading her to a quiet area near the locker rooms. And there he was, Steph Curry, still in his jersey, holding a duffel bag. He let her know that he meant what he said earlier. Then he went on to tell her that he owed her one because he bumped into her earlier. But this next statement shocked her even more. Steph told her that he heard a little bit about her story from some of the folks around, and then he paused, his voice softening. "You're doing so much for your family. It's inspiring." Kim was stunned. She didn't know what to say. Steph reached into his bag and pulled out a signed basketball. "This is for you," he said, handing it to her. "But there's more." He gestured to someone behind him, and a team representative stepped forward with an envelope. "This is for your son," Steph explained. "It's a little something to help with his tuition. You've done so much to get him this far. Let us help you finish the job." Kim's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a check, enough to cover the remaining costs of Ryan's tuition. Tears welled up in her eyes. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice breaking. Steph grinned and told her to keep being amazing, and tell Ryan to pay it forward when he's out there building rockets or robots or whatever cool stuff he's working on. Kim laughed through her tears, clutching the envelope and basketball to her chest. In that moment, the weight she'd been carrying for months felt just a little lighter. Steph gave her a quick hug before heading back to his team. "Take care of yourself," he said. "And don't forget, you're the real MVP tonight." The crowd, which had reduced by now, already captivated by the interaction, erupted into thunderous applause. Cameras from every angle caught Kim's spontaneous gesture, and the big screen replayed it in slow motion, making it look like she was soaking in the energy of the entire arena. Kim felt the warmth of the moment envelop her, a stark contrast to the cold anxiety she had carried all night. The applause wasn't just for Steph or the game anymore. It was for her. For a brief moment, she was the center of attention. As the game resumed, Kim returned to her duties with a renewed sense of determination. The pain in her ankle seemed to fade, replaced by a strange mixture of pride and hope. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was someone whose story had touched a legend. Later that evening, after the final buzzer sounded and the Lakers secured a narrow victory, Kim began clearing her section. The adrenaline from earlier was wearing off, replaced by exhaustion. She limped slightly as she carried the last few trays back to the staff room, her ankle reminding her of the earlier mishap. Just as she was about to clock out, a member of the Lakers staff approached her. "Kim?" She turned, her heart skipping a beat. She responded, after which the staff member gave her something from Steph. The staff member said, handing her an envelope. Confused, Kim opened it and found a handwritten note inside. "Kim, I've been where you are. My mom worked so hard to make sure I could follow my dreams. I can see you're doing the same for your family. Please accept this as a small thank you for all that you do. Keep going. You're stronger than you think. Steph." Hadn't he done enough already? Kim felt strange because just a few moments before, he had handed her an envelope. But deep down, she knew her life had just taken a big turn in the right direction, and this made her so happy. Folded inside the note was another check, a significant amount. Apparently, one of Steph's colleagues who also heard about Kim's story wanted to support, so he did that through Steph. Kim's hands shook as tears welled up in her eyes. She clutched the envelope to her chest, overwhelmed by the gesture. That night, as she walked to her car under the bright arena lights, Kim felt a lightness she hadn't felt in years. The financial struggles weren't magically solved, but this act of kindness gave her something she hadn't dared to hope for in a long time: relief. When she got home, Ryan was still awake, his laptop open as he worked on his latest project. He looked up, surprised to see her smiling despite the late hour. "What happened?" he asked, curious. Kim handed him the note and the check. "You're not dropping out," she said simply. Ryan read the note, his eyes widening. "Steph did this?" Kim nodded, and for the first time in a long while, they both laughed. A deep, heartfelt laugh that echoed through their small home. From that night on, Kim's story inspired those around her. She was no longer just a waitress. She was proof that hard work didn't go unnoticed. And whenever life felt too heavy, she'd remember the moment when a basketball legend not only saw her struggle but chose to lift her up. But it didn't end there. The video of Kim and Steph's brief yet powerful interaction became an internet sensation. By the next morning, it had already been shared millions of times. News outlets covered it. Social media exploded with hashtags like Grace Under Pressure and Steph Lift. People were drawn to the raw emotion of the moment, the accidental fall, Steph's immediate response, and Kim's triumphant gesture toward the sky. The comments on the video reflected the deep impact it had on viewers. "This is what kindness looks like. We need more moments like this." Kim's strength and Steph's humility Both are inspiring. Can someone find her? I want to donate to whatever she needs. Kim had no idea any of this was happening. She had gotten home late after her double shift, too exhausted to check her phone. Her morning started as usual, another long shift at the diner, another day of balancing work and worries. But when she arrived, her manager met her at the door with a grin. "Kim, you're famous." Kim frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Her manager pulled out their phone, showing her the viral video. Kim's eyes widened as she watched the scene unfold. Her fall, Steph's quick action, and her emotional reaction. She felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She asked if everyone had seen the video. "Everyone," her manager replied. "But they love it. You've inspired people." Kim didn't have time to process it fully before starting her shift. But as she served customers, she noticed something unusual. People were friendlier than usual. A few even recognized her from the video. "You're the waitress from the Kim video, aren't you?" one man asked. Kim nodded shyly. "You handled that with such grace," he said. "My wife and I were so moved by it. We just wanted to thank you." By the end of her shift, Kim had received more tips than she usually made in an entire week, but that was still only the beginning. Later that evening, as Kim prepared for her second shift at the arena, her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in from friends, family, and strangers. Reporters wanted interviews. Social media users were tagging her in posts. Even local businesses were reaching out with offers of help. One message stood out. It was from Steph Curry's non-profit organization. "Hi Kim, this is Kayla from Steph's team. He'd like to meet with you to discuss how he can help further. Please let us know when you're available." Kim sat down, her legs suddenly feeling weak. She stared at the message, her heart pounding. Was this real? The following week, Kim found herself sitting in a private room at the arena, waiting to meet Steph Curry. She felt out of place in her best dress, fidgeting nervously. When Steph walked in, his presence filled the room. He smiled warmly and extended his hand. "Kim," he said, "it's so good to see you again. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me." Kim shook his hand, barely managing to speak. "Thank you for everything," she stammered. Steph sat down across from her, his expression serious yet kind. He told her he wanted to talk to her because her story reminded him of his mom. "I know what it's like to have someone work so hard to keep everything together. My mom did that for me, and I see that same strength in you." He slid a folder across the table. Kim hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a job offer for both Kim. Steph's foundation offered Kim a job as a community outreach coordinator, a role that would allow her to support others in need while providing a stable income for her family. Tears streamed down Kim's face as she looked up at him. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Steph told her she didn't have to say anything. "You've already done the hardest part, showing up for your family every day. This is just a way to make things a little easier." The meeting ended with a handshake, but for Kim, it felt like so much more. Word of the meeting spread quickly. News outlets reported on Steph's generosity, but they also highlighted Kim's tenacity. The viral video became more than just a feel-good story. It turned into a movement. Donations poured in from around the world to support not only Kim, but also other hardworking individuals facing similar struggles. Kim's life changed in ways she never imagined. She no longer had to work tiresome shifts. Ryan finished college without the weight of debt. And through their new job, they both found a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Most importantly, Kim rediscovered something she thought she'd lost: hope. And it all started with a fall, a moment of kindness, and a tray of spilled drinks. What do you think about Steph's act of kindness? Do you think he did it for genuine reasons? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it. You will enjoy it. You will enjoy it.